Here to discuss this story at length, the Director of Research and Investigations at Judicial Watch, Chris Farrell. Chris, we welcome you back to America's Forum. Your organization filed those lawsuits in November 2014. Is this keeping with standard practice that defense and state have failed to respond to this request?
They are notoriously slow to respond, and frequently the only way that we can get the attention of the government and compel them to produce the records that we seek is only by filing a lawsuit. It's a sad state of affairs, but their instinct is to just kind of blow things off and be non-responsive. But the surefire way of getting their attention is having them appear in front of a federal district court judge and explain why they're not cooperating with the open records law.
Let's go back to June when this first came about. The Bergdahl story seems to have all but disappeared from the headlines, but your organization is still fighting for information. If you can, kind of explain to our viewers how this all came about.
Sure. Well, I mean, just initially at face value, the story, I mean, to be colloquial, it just looked creepy, right? It looked like a crazy, bad decision. It was pretty clear that the administration violated the law by not providing Congress with sufficient notice about their intention to release these five really Taliban leaders out of Guantanamo. And look, folks say, well, these guys are just going to go off and be held in this sort of loose custody, and they're not going to rejoin the fight. Let's be clear. These guys are not foot soldiers. They're middle-aged guys whose weapons are laptops and cell phones. They're organizers. They are logistics guys and operations planners. So, they're not out pulling a trigger anywhere, and they wouldn't be expected to. They are most dangerous doing what they're doing right now, and that's sitting in a hotel room with a laptop and a cell phone. So we want to know how and why the decision was made to release these guys. We also want to know what sort of payments were made. The Pentagon is very cute in its terminology about various monies that were expended to facilitate this swap for Bergdahl. And they don't want to call it a ransom or a bribe, but it looks like money went out the door to people to facilitate this entire deal. So there's a lot of open questions, and the American public deserves straight up answers. They need to know what happened.
And you just mentioned one of those compelling questions. Was there a ransom paid? Was there a bribe paid to the Taliban? Now, I don't know if there's been buzz about this, and obviously you filed that FOIA lawsuit to get the information, but what are your suspicions about that? Any ballpark figure on the amount of money that the U.S. may have given up?
Well, it would have to be in the millions. I don't know precisely the amount. And, they're not going to call it a ransom. They're not going to call it a bribe. They're not going to call it a lot of things. They're going to, make reference to certain liaison functions that had to be fulfilled by, facilitators there's going to be happy talk. There's going to be euphemisms or other language used other than bribe or ransom. But that's what it amounted to. And there needs to be accountability on this. We already have established a precedent, unfortunately, but we can't follow through and make it a matter of course that the U.S. Does these sorts of swaps of terrorists for a guy who appears to be a deserter and then pays money on top of it. It's insanity.
So, Chris, just to backtrack, so you filed FOIAs. Now they didn't respond to those FOIAs. Now you're filing two lawsuits saying basically that they may have violated the transparency law and the clear and unambiguous law. What do you think is going to happen now? We only have about 20 seconds.
Pretty routine stuff. The judge sets a calendar and he orders the agency to start producing records. And we'll see what they come up with.
And so, Chris, you might say to the State Department and the Defense Department, we'll see you in court. We don't say that to you. We just say we'll see you again soon. And Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch, we thank you very much for your time. Coming up on America's Forum, it is back to the courtroom, so to speak. Our friend, Boston attorney Jeffrey Nathan, with our legal brief. That's coming up following this brief time out from America's Forum.